Good morning. So today we'll be talking about selecting your coaching style. In the previous chapters, we discussed our identity and coaching objectives. So, in order for you to continue to develop your coaching philosophy, you'll also need to decide on your coaching style. And by the way, there is a correct answer for that. Your determination on how you teach, what you teach, how your practices and games are planned and organized, your team structure, from the discipline all the way down to the role your athletes will play on the team, are all influenced by your coaching style. So, there are three specific coaching styles that I'm going to talk about. The first one is command style, where the coach makes all the decisions. The second is submissive style, which generally means that the coach is more submissive or hands off. A lot of times they lack competence or confidence in themselves or their knowledge of the sport, and they're unwilling to take the necessary time to prepare or unable to take the necessary time to prepare for practice and competition. And so that's one of the reasons they'll take the hands-off approach. And then finally, there's cooperative style coaching where there's shared decision making. The focus is on teaching, but the challenge with that is finding a balance between leadership and allowing the athletes to have a voice. So again, back to command style coaching, it's usually my way or no way. The role of the athlete is just to respond to commands. They're supposed to listen, absorb, and comply. This style is considered very old school. And as a coach, you'll find that the command style will either work or it won't for certain athletes. It will depend on their personalities and what they're looking for in the sport. More oftentimes than not, these students will start to kind of lack motivation because essentially they're just being told what to do. They aren't actually learning or understanding why they're doing what they're doing. In the submissive style of coaching, it's more of a let's see how this plays out. The coach isn't really giving feedback. As I said before, it may be because they lack the confidence or the competence to give that feedback. They're not knowledgeable of their sport, and there's little to no team structure. So it's kind of disorganized and everybody's doing their own thing. The coach in this style makes the fewest decisions possible and only utilizes discipline when absolutely necessary. And oftentimes, when that coach does utilize discipline, it doesn't have a lot of impact. And they usually end up being seen as a glorified babysitter. So, in an instance where a coach has little to no experience and little to no guidance or mentorship, they can fall into this style very easily because they really don't know what to do. So, they don't do anything. And hopefully by the end of this course, you'll be better prepared, and so you won't fall into this one. And again, the last style is cooperative style coaching. We're all in this together mentality is going to be there. You allow for structured problem solving, and this really emphasizes the philosophy of athletes first and winning is second that we talked about in the previous chapter. The coach will share some of the decision making with the athletes, and these coaches are usually able to get the buy in from that athlete or athletes for that reason. The challenge is finding the balance between directing the athletes and letting them direct themselves. And this style is most effective when you're coaching because it has some structure but allows for problem solving. If you look on the second space there, I have the 2 minute drill as an example. A lot of coaches will put 2 minutes on the clock in different sports where the clock applies, and they will provide the team with a scenario. They allow the team to act out that scenario, and then at the end of that 2 minute drill, they'll provide feedback to the team as to how they handled the situation and things they could have done differently, things they could have done better, and then sometimes they'll run the drill again. So on the surface, command style may seem to be effective because teams need organization. And again, that may prove to be profitable. I wouldn't say profitable, but beneficial for some time. But eventually, again, you'll lose that motivation from your athletes. So cooperative style is going to be the best way to approach coaching. So if this is not something that you're familiar with, I would say do some research. Go back and reread the information on the textbook to just try to take away some habits that you can start to pick up as a coach to allow you to adapt to this particular coaching style. The next thing that we're going to talk about is leadership in coaching, because that's also going to impact how you are able to lead your team and the style you use as a coach. So, what is a leader? A leader is a person who makes things happen, and coaches in their leadership roles must have the skills to move people into action. This means that you have to hone your communication skills. That's not just talking, it's listening, negotiating, encouraging, and consoling. And so, your role as a leader is going to take the form of 6 different actions, which are listed here. Leaders have to have goals, set goals, and have a vision of the future. They have to build an environment that's conducive to their team achieving the goals. They have to be able to instill values and help to build character, which we'll talk about later. They have to learn how to motivate their athletes, resolve conflicts, communicate effectively with each athlete as well as members of their staff. And we'll dive into a lot of these in later chapters. It's also important to remember that goal setting seems like an easy thing to do, and that's not necessarily the case. Of course, your goal is to win, but it can't be your only goal. You have to learn to focus on outcome and that your athletes are moving in the direction that you want them to go as far as learning and developing is concerned. And then taking those goals and creating a vision and communicating that vision to everyone who's a part of the team. The goals of a team will normally evolve as the season progresses. So, as a coach, you may start off with one goal and it may be broken down into several parts, and you can use those parts to create the vision for your team. The next thing that's going to be essential is developing and nurturing a culture for your team. For your vision or your goals to become reality, you must develop and maintain an effective team culture. Team culture is the way things are going to be done on your team, and a healthy culture will create a climate for success. When you're looking at the components of culture, you're looking at these factors listed here: the team tradition, which is the attitude of the team, the basic operation, so how the team is going to run or function, management of information, that's the communication structure between the coaches, both head and assistant coaches, coaches and athletes, coaches and administrators, if that's applicable, and coaches and parents. Uh, the nature of the sport refers to whether you're dealing with an individual or a team sport, a recreational, or a competitive program. And then the next thing you want to talk about, or the next thing that you want to build when you're looking at team culture, is having clearly defined roles for your team. So, what is the power, influence, and status structure in your team? So, what's the role of the assistants? What's the role of the athletes when it comes to team captains, or when it comes to your seniors, or the athletes that are returning from a previous season? What are their roles on the team and how do they contribute? And then finally, your leadership style is going to be a part of the team culture. Your coaching style and your leadership style can vary. They're not going to be, I'm a cooperative leader, so I'm a cooperative style coach. So I would suggest that you do some research on leadership styles and clearly identify the type of leader that you want to be and work towards practicing those habits. And when you do that, you'll be able to develop that team culture. This is the process of bringing several individuals from different backgrounds together to form your team. It's not something that can be delegated to one of your assistants or a senior or a leader on the team, and it will always be something that you're constantly working on. The actions that assist you with building a dynamic team culture are listed on page 38 of the textbook. Next, I want to talk about the 3 other qualities that the text emphasizes as qualities of successful coaches. The first is knowledge of the sport. It is essential for you to know the rules, technical and tactical skills of the sport that you coach, whether you're teaching beginner or advanced athletes. You have to know what's going on. Not knowing how to teach those technical and tactical skills will put you at risk of possibly having athletes that are injured because they're being taught improperly, and it can also cause frustration both for you and the athletes. This doesn't mean that you had to play the sport to coach it. If you didn't participate in the sport and you're coaching it, you may find it difficult to train your athletes, and it's best to become very familiar with the sport and how it functions, be knowledgeable, and even be trained in the sports. Even if you are a rock star in your sport, you still have to strive to improve your skills, and you approach coaching by going to clinics, keeping up with what's going on in the sport, the changes that may happen, talking with other coaches, and finding mentors who can guide you through the coaching process. The next is motivation. You can have all the skills in the world, but if you're unable to motivate your athletes, you will not be a successful coach. Coaching is a very demanding position, and the work doesn't stop after practice or after competition. You're constantly looking for ways to improve. It is an intense situation that's going to require clear communication and decision making. And the decisions you make may not always be popular. So when you have the opportunity to motivate your team, you have to be ready because those opportunities may come in spurts. And then lastly, you need to have empathy. Empathy is the ability to understand thoughts, feelings, and emotions of your athletes and then convey your sensitivity to them. Your athletes will work harder and are willing to listen when they know that you care. The last thing I want to touch on is the coaching code of ethics. There are some behavior guidelines on page 41, and I'd like for you to look at the text. Select a code of ethics that aligns with your interest to help you to determine the type of coach you want to be and what you believe. Through these first modules, we've broken down the components of formulating your coaching philosophy. And there are many organizations that have codes of ethics. There are many websites and resources for developing your coaching philosophy. So I want you to review the information on the last 2 pages of the text for this chapter and decide what aligns with your values and your beliefs. This will be a key part of your assignment for this module, which is to build your coaching philosophy. If you have any questions or if you're confused about the material that you find, feel free to reach out to me. Again, this is the last part of our segment on building your coaching philosophy. I look forward to reading what you guys write, and I hope you have a great week.